Slay the Spire 2 is a triumph, taking the original game, which was already so fantastic, and iterating on it in every possible way to somehow elevate what was already viewed as perfection even higher. Slay the Spire 2 is genuinely one of the most impressive games I've ever played, and I want to talk about why. Now, one of the most impressive things you can do is liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment. I was very excited for Slay the Spire 2. Slay the Spire 1 is one of my most played games on Steam, with a few hundred hours over the past however many years since the game has released. While I'm not the hugest fan of roguelites in general, I have always loved Slay the Spire for its approach to the genre, and that might even be why I found it so hard to get into other roguelites, because Slay the Spire does it so well, and every other game just feels like a pale imitation of it. So while I was sure I was going to get Slay the Spire 2, I also wasn't sure how much better Slay the Spire 2 could be. Was it just going to be the same game with a new coat of paint and maybe a couple new classes? And honestly, I would have been fine with that. But instead, Megacrit decided to redesign the entire game, what feels like from the ground up, nailed it, and still maintained so much of what made that first game so unique and impressive. Right out of the gate, the most obvious change is the visuals, the graphics. This game looks really good. The enemy designs are so unique and clear. The animation of some of the different attacks, especially once you start playing and get into it, it just looks so much better than the first Slay the Spire. The card arts all look fantastic. They've all been updated. Some can get a little too busy, and I do feel like sometimes it's hard to differentiate cards just by their art. I've had a couple times where I thought I was playing one card and accidentally played a different one by accident. That might be just me, but that doesn't mean that they don't still look good. But it's not just the graphics that changed about how you slay the Spire. The implementation of the overall mechanics and the acts of the game is so cool. Each act now essentially has a theme based on the Eternal that you meet at the beginning of it. The Eternal essentially replaces the boss relic that you would get at the end of acts in Slay the Spire 1. The Eternals are really cool, their rewards are fairly unique, and for the most part, all feel relatively applicable based on the build that you have. It's usually very clear which one you want to take, but it's not always the same one in all cases, assuming you run into that Eternal again. There are a couple where it feels like one of the choices, I just don't see myself ever taking it, and maybe that's just me not being good enough at the game, or they just need to balance it. But that's the great thing, this game's in early access, which is insane, and I'll talk about this towards the end, but the amount of content that is here, this could have just released as a full game, and I don't think anybody would have complained about it. But the fact that it's in early access means there's so much more to come as far as balance changes, updates, new things. It's really overwhelming. There are a couple new classes, and while I am very impressed by them, the thing that I think is most impressive as far as looking at this whole package is the returning classes. How they have been able to maintain the spirit of those characters. It still feels the same to play all those characters, and yet they've completely revamped, reimagined, and re-implemented so much of their mechanics that they're not the same classes at all. And to be able to walk that balance of introducing so much new, but still not letting it feel different from how it used to feel, I think is an absolute triumph. If the game just had these three classes, if it was just the original Slay the Spire classes, but implemented how they've implemented them, again, I think that would have been sufficient. Like every little piece of this game, if that was all they did to iterate on Slay the Spire 1, would have been sufficient in making this a unique, standalone new experience. But then they did that like 6 times. I love the new cards and build paths that they've made for these old characters. There's so many new synergies between them, and so far, it feels so different from Slay the Spire 1. Slay the Spire 1, it could really feel like you got into a build for the silent. You're making a shivs build, or a poison build, or a discard build. And while, yes, you would have maybe a splash of some of those other mechanics, you or at least I would find myself over-focusing into just that single mechanic. Whereas now, it really does just feel like I'm making a silent deck, and the silent deck is gonna have discard to make use of the sly mechanic. It's gonna have shivs. It's gonna have poison, because all of those play so much better together now because of some of these synergistic cards that they've made that let you get poison when you discard a card or draw a card or give your shivs more damage just based on other things that you do. And it's the same with all other characters. The additional focus for the Ironclad on exhausting, vulnerability on the enemies, the defect with its new orb especially, and how you can manipulate orbs. And I love too how they've removed the Watcher, and yet you can still feel her presence throughout the game. So many cards of hers have been redistributed to the other classes that even without being in the game, you still feel the class is there with us in spirit. I know a lot of people didn't like the Watcher, at least at the higher levels of play. I enjoyed it for what it was. I found the Watcher pretty fun. And then you have the new classes, which are also so cool because they both bring an entirely new perspective in how you manage resources. The Necromancer brings Asti, which is essentially a source of additional block every turn. Because he's a separate pet, he doesn't get the same boosts from strength, but he also doesn't get debuffs from enemy actions. And that brings such a cool and unique sort of approach to deck building. Do you want to over-focus on Asti? Do you want to more focus on status effects? Do you want to over-focus on attacks? Because you do kind of have Asti there to block for you and things like that. And then the Regent, which just straight up has a second energy source. This one for sure has been the one I've struggled with the most. I don't want to say it's my least favorite, but it is definitely one that requires some learning, given how unique it is, and is the one that I've not made it as high up in the Ascensions yet with. But at the same time, I see the potential there by having cards that gain star energy while costing your normal energy, and then other cards that only use star energy and don't require it, right? I feel like there's a lot of potential to break this character. And that's what's so fun about these Slay the Spire games. As you play, as you get to learn the classes more, you find these different synergies and how the cards can work together, and you can get really overpowered. And I think that's something they've leaned into a bit more with this game. It feels easier to get to that point where you feel very, very strong. Again, because of some of those additional synergies that they've made. And yet, thanks to how they've balanced it, it doesn't at the same time make the game feel easy. It still feels rewarding to get those crazy builds in your deck, and it still feels touch and go if you're not getting there fast enough into the early second act. And that's especially true as you get higher up in the Ascensions. Right now I've made it to Ascension 6 or 7 with some of the characters, not as high with all of them, but I can already see how the balance is really getting refined in those higher acts where you still can get pretty broken pretty easily, but you have to be really wise with how you build your deck, and it's easy to also burn out and not make it. Overall, Slay the Spire 2 somehow managed to exceed, I think, everybody's expectations. I don't know who is playing this game. If you liked Slay the Spire 1, I don't know how you would be disappointed by Slay the Spire 2. As far as I'm concerned, it is better in every single way. Every aspect of the game has been improved and iterated on to make what is arguably one of the best games ever made, especially the roguelike deck builder genre. The amount of strategies available, the way you can play it, and the fact that it has co-op. I don't have friends, I haven't really been able to do the co-op mode, but watching some of the streamers and content creators play the 4-player just looks like it's a whole new avenue to explore. There's so much here, and this is early access. It's hard to imagine what more they could add to the game, but I'm sure they've got ideas, and I'm totally on board to see where this game goes. But what do you think? Is Slay the Spire 2 somehow a disappointment to you? Please let me know in the comments down below. I would be so interested to hear why this game is not as good as the first one. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the like button, consider subscribing to the channel, and I will see you all with the next video.